Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so when Le Monde decided to identify the 100 greatest books of the 20th century, they didn't just throw together a casual reading list. What they actually created was a mirror, one that perfectly reflects the triumphs, the massive traumas, and the profound shifts in human consciousness over 100 incredibly turbulent years. So today, we're not just going to read off rankings. Instead, we're going to transform this overwhelming list into a cohesive journey, breaking down this monumental collection by the powerful themes that honestly still dictate our lives today. I mean, just think about it for a second. The 1900s gave us two world wars, the terrifying rise and fall of totalitarian regimes, completely unparalleled technological leaps like computers, and a total reevaluation of what it even means to be human. So how on earth do you capture all of that whiplash in just one reading list? It sounds literally impossible. Yet the books chosen for this canon managed to do exactly that by focusing intensely on the human condition. To really grasp the scale of what we're talking about, let's look at the heavy hitter, James Joyce's Ulysses, which actually ranks as the #1 greatest book of all time on the aggregated list. So what makes this book the absolute pinnacle of the century's literature? Well, it tackles these massive epic themes like identity and heroism, drawing really heavily on Homer's Odyssey. But here's the kicker. It compresses all that epic heroism into a single day in the life of a guy named Leopold Bloom, who's just walking around Dublin trying to sell ads and avoid his wife's lover. It completely redefined narrative structure by proving that the epic and the everyday are, a lot of the times, the exact same thing. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the century in literature. Moving right along to Section 2, Totalitarianism and Dystopian Visions. Now, it is absolutely fascinating to put the century's two most famous dystopian novels side by side. On one hand, you've got George Orwell's 1984, presenting a world where the totalitarian regime of Big Brother maintains total control through pain, constant surveillance, and the manipulation of truth. Love and independent thought are literal acts of rebellion. But then you've got Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which presents an entirely different and maybe even more insidious vision. In Huxley's world, society isn't controlled by pain at all. It's controlled by pleasure. Humans are genetically bred into specific castes and pharmaceutically conditioned to just be completely compliant. Honestly, looking at it today, Huxley's vision of control through distraction and pleasure feels uncomfortably close to our modern smartphone-addicted reality, doesn't it? They're two totally different paths leading to the exact same loss of human freedom. But we have to move from fiction to stark, terrifying reality. In the Gulag Archipelago, Alexander Solzhenitsyn documents the sheer inhumanity and the massive scale of the Soviet regime, drawing directly from his own experiences as a prisoner. This was not some sci-fi warning about the future. It was a devastating real-time report of the present. He reveals the absolute brutality of the police operations and this vast, sprawling network of forced labor camps. It's a really sobering reminder that the darkest, most terrifying visions of Orwell and Huxley had actual, real-world parallels. That brings us heavily into Section 3, the horrors of war. So how exactly do humans cope when society completely shatters? Well, literature leaves us this incredible global footprint of collective trauma. We start with the absurdity and utter despair of the World War I trenches in Louis Ferdinand Céline's Journey to the End of the Night. Then, we shift to the transient, fragile nature of life and love during the Spanish Civil War through the eyes of an American dynamiter in Ernest Hemingway's For Whom the Bell Tolls. And finally, we confront the deeply personal, harrowing realities of World War II. We see this through the powerful teenage diary of Anne Frank hiding from the Nazis in an Amsterdam annex and Primo Levi's incredibly raw account of surviving the Auschwitz concentration camp. Primo Levi's account, If This Is a Man, really forces us to stop and ask ourselves, when absolutely everything is stripped away, what is the core of our humanity? He gives us a detailed, unflinching look at the systematic dehumanization in the camp. Yet at its core, the narrative raises these profound questions about morality, resilience, and the completely unyielding human spirit. It is so much more than just a record of evil. It's an absolute testament to survival. Okay, let's pivot a bit to Section 4. Existentialism and the absurd. Faced with all that immense global trauma, writers were desperately asking some heavy questions. Mainly, if the traditional structures of society, religion, and morality allowed two entire world wars to happen, what does anything actually mean anymore? Jean-Paul Sartre answered this with his foundational work, Being and Nothingness, basically arguing that we are radically free. There is no pre-written destiny. We construct our own identities purely through our actions and our interactions. But as you can imagine, with that ultimate freedom comes intense responsibility. Sartre strongly warns against what he calls bad faith, meaning we cannot hide from the responsibility of our own actions or deny our freedom by disblaming society or our circumstances. Simply put, we are the authors of our own lives, for better or worse. And man, other literary giants took this newfound existential freedom and just ran with it, spinning it into absolute narrative gold. Albert Camus totally challenged our expectations of morality with The Stranger, following an emotionally detached protagonist who just passively accepts his fate after committing a completely senseless murder. Samuel Beckett stripped away the traditional plot entirely with his play Waiting for Godot, leaving two characters stuck in this endless existential despair, literally just waiting forever for a man who never shows up. And Franz Kafka? He plunged us right into the ultimate nightmare of modern bureaucracy with Trial, trapping a bank clerk in an incredibly inefficient, illogical judicial process for a crime that they never even bothered to specify. Which naturally leads us to Section 5, Memory, Time, and Identity. So, leaving the external chaos of war and political ideology behind for a minute, we're going to turn inward. As the world outside got more and more fragmented, writers started looking really closely at how human consciousness itself operates. Marcel Proust completely changed the game with his monumental 7-volume novel In Search of Lost Time. He perfectly captured something we've all felt, how a simple smell or the taste of a tea-soaked cake can violently yank a childhood memory right back into the present moment. Fun fact about this, Proust actually originally drafted this iconic scene using a plain old piece of toast, but the delicate Madeleine cake ended up being way more poetic. It is just a brilliant, searching exploration of how time is constantly altering our identity, our loves, and our experiences. Meanwhile, over in Latin America, Gabriel Garcia Marquez tackles these exact same concepts of time and identity, but through a totally different cultural lens, using magical realism in 100 Years of Solitude. And the brilliant thing is, he didn't use magic to escape reality, he used it to express a history so deeply chaotic that it actually felt supernatural. By following the multi-generational saga of the Buendia family, he beautifully illustrates that history, and our identities often repeat themselves. It shows us that time isn't a straight line at all, it's a circle. And whether we're talking about the inescapable ghosts of the American South and William Faulkner's stream of consciousness masterpiece, The Sound and the Fury, or the very literal economic barriers preventing women from creating art in Virginia Woolf's essay A Room of One's Own, both authors prove a massive point. Our identities are heavily, heavily restricted by the environments we're born into. Woolf makes this powerful, enduring assertion that artistic potential is inextricably linked to material reality. She argued that a woman literally requires money and a room of her own if she's ever going to overcome societal expectations and actually create fiction. All right, bringing it all home with our final section, the enduring human condition. As we pull all these massive threads together, you gotta wonder, what is the ultimate takeaway from these 100 incredible books? I think John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath reminds us perfectly. Following the Joad family as they're displaced from Oklahoma during the Great Depression, the novel is this incredibly stark portrayal of migrant hardships. Yet it reminds us that even amidst extreme injustice and man's inhumanity to man, it is shared sacrifice, unity, and the sheer, unstoppable power of family that maintains our core humanity. And you know, after all the war, the crushing bureaucracy, and the existential dread we've just unpacked today, sometimes the absolute most profound commentary comes from a tiny little asteroid prince and his fox. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince teaches us so much about love, loss, and the true nature of friendship. It is this brilliant, dynamic reminder that amidst all the complexities and downright absurdities of the adult world, holding on to our childlike wonder and curiosity is absolutely essential to a fulfilling existence. We've journeyed through some truly dystopian fears, totally absurd realities, and profoundly deep memories today. But take a look around us right now. Are we living in Orwell's surveillance state, Huxley's world of endless distraction, Kafka's crushing bureaucracy? Or are we, like Camus and Sartre suggest, radically free to write our own meaning? The 20th century already wrote its script. So the question is, how will you write yours?